Chapter 29. Treadon Nelson. Treadon knocked on Ellie's door. He wished he'd had time to grab some flowers, but there was a part of him that knew he needed to take smaller steps, let her take her time. He could hear the Jenkins twins, Mike and Foster, fighting over the door handle. Foster won the tug-of-war and opened the door a crack. "What's the password?" Foster asked. "Ninjas?" Treadon took an educated guess when he saw the costume Foster wore. "Yep, you can come in." The door opened wide. Ellie stood there in a loose black turtleneck and high-waisted pants. It took Treadon a moment to catch his breath. "Are you ready?" Treadon asked. "Yes, I think it's time." She turned and kissed both the boys on the head, and then carefully shut the door, backing up to make sure they didn't try to put their fingers in the way. "Cute kids," Treadon said, noticing the intentional way she kept him from going into the house. "They are, aren't they? I imagine you used to be adorable once." Ellie kept her eyes forward, her mouth quirked as she led the way to the old Pontiac in the driveway. "I was actually a very ugly child," Ellie gasped. "You can't call children ugly. They're beautiful." "So ugly I was irresistible. These cheeks are naturally rosy from all the old women who used to pinch them." He quickened his step and beat her to the door in time to open it for her. She paused, lips pressed together. "Thank you." Treadon waited for her to settle into the seat and then shut the door. He tried to read her, but there were too many messages. She liked the attention. She liked that he'd opened her door, but there was a hesitation, like she was doing something she'd promised herself she'd never do. But not letting a guy open a door for her seemed like a weird promise to make as a child. He started the car and pulled out onto the street. He gripped the wheel tight so that his fingers didn't shake. He could push down his fear of cars when he had control of the wheel, as long as he didn't take his eyes off the road. Keeping his eyes straight ahead made it hard for him to gauge Ellie's reactions to his questions. "Are you okay eating outdoors?" Treadon asked. "Yes." "Any allergies?" He stopped at a red light and could see Ellie turn her face toward him, head to one side, eyebrow raised. Treadon risked a glance at her, feeling his pulse race even though the light was still red. "Okay, dumb question. You're an angel. You can heal. So no allergies. Spring must be great for you." Ellie let out a huff, not quite a laugh. "We're technically all allergic to black hematite, but fortunately, I don't think we'll run into any of that on an outdoor patio." "That's good. I don't exactly have a patio for us, though." "Where are we going?" "It's a surprise." Treadon took them up into the hills on the 405 until they were out of the city, past the suburbs, past where he and Jaren had the accident. He took an exit and pulled off onto a dirt road that was barely 2 tire tracks wide. The road was steep, and the Pontiac roared with effort. "I don't suppose you can heal a car if anything happens out here." It was a joke, but his anxiety was growing, and he questioned his decision. Maybe they should have just eaten in his backyard. Ellie pressed her hand against the dashboard as the car hit a large rock. He drove slowly. There was no conversation as they struggled to keep from bumping their heads against the window or against each other. Rachel recommended the lookout and had given him instructions. She'd shared her advice on a way to a girl's heart, but she hadn't said exactly how many times she'd been up here, or with whom. Treadon finally saw the tree that marked the destination. The car rolled to a stop. "Here we are." He watched the reaction on Ellie's face. She wasn't impressed yet. The 2 tire tracks disappeared a few feet in front of the car into short brush and patches of long yellow grass. The churned-up dust caught up to them, giving the air a polluted appearance. "Charming." Ellie tried to open her door, but it caught on a thick, prickly bush. "Wait for it." He popped the trunk and pulled out the picnic basket. Rachel had offered to help him pack it, but he wanted to do that part himself. He shut the trunk and pushed the bush's branches aside. Ellie's door opened a little wider, but stuck on the edge of the rut so that Ellie had to squeeze out of the door sideways. She turned in a slow circle. "Not exactly where I pictured our first date, but you did hit the population criteria. No one around, just the 2 of us. Did you say something about dinner?" Treadon lifted the picnic basket. "Right here. Come this way. There's a spot on the other side of the tree." The tree was an anomaly in the area. Its height of 12 feet towered over the surrounding plants. The crooked branches sported sharp pine needles growing in protective bunches. The trunk leaned pathetically to one side, depicting its constant battle with the wind. The barely visible rabbit trail snaked around tufts of grass until the tree was behind them and the ground dropped away unexpectedly in front of them. Ellie let out a squeak of surprise as they reached the crest of the hill. Los Angeles played out in front of them, and in the distance, the Pacific Ocean sparkled with the reflection of the setting sun. Ellie walked closer to the edge. Treadon set down the picnic basket and spread out a blanket on the ground. He tried to keep his eyes down, but he couldn't help glancing at her silhouette against the sky. Her shoulders were back, her head up, the air playing with her hair. He moved to stand beside her, watching the light reflect off her skin, her eyes closed. "It's beautiful." Ellie put her hand out, touching his arm. Her eyes still didn't open. "I needed this. I haven't opened my eyes to see, not for a really long time. It's good to see the light in the world, when I was so busy hiding in the shadows." She opened her eyes. "What's for dinner? Do you like grape or strawberry?" He led her back to the blanket and pulled out 2 sandwiches that had somehow gotten smashed in the basket. The jelly had soaked through the bread, leaving a stain in the center of each sandwich. Ellie covered her mouth, a laugh escaping through her fingertips. "I didn't say anything about a 5-star dinner." He tossed her the least squished sandwich and then pulled out a bag of potato chips. "It's perfect." She daintily pulled her jelly-encrusted sandwich from the sticky bag and took a bite. "Strawberry is my favorite." "Lucky guess. Is grape your favorite?" Treadon took a bite and chewed slowly, exaggerating his thoughtfulness. "No, I should have made myself a ham and cheese." "Swiss." Ellie laughed, rocking back a little. "Tell me more about you." Treadon shrugged. "I wouldn't say I have a lot of deep layers. I play football so that I can support myself in college, maybe even earn enough to take some pressure off my mom. She's always working so hard." "I thought you had a dad that saved people. Doesn't he help?" Treadon took another bite of his sandwich and regretted it. The peanut butter balled up with the white bread and refused to go down his throat. He swallowed hard, forcing the entire lump down. His eyes watered from the pain. "Gabe isn't my father. He isn't even my stepdad. He's just a negative presence that brings my mom down. I guess he's trying to do good, but he doesn't make any money, and he's gone more than he's around. I just think my mom deserves better than that." "And what about Gabe and you?" Ellie took another bite of sandwich, a bit of red jelly squeezing out the back. Treadon looked out at the ocean, wondering how he would answer that question. "He's always disappointed. I can tell in the way he stands when I'm around, how he's always on edge, like I should be doing something more, and he's waiting for me to step up. I guess football isn't enough for him." Ellie took her last bite of sandwich. She stared at her fingers covered with excess jelly. Treadon reached into the basket and pulled out the 2 napkins and the soda he'd brought. She took the napkin with her sticky hand and wrapped her fingers around the can. Their fingers interlocked. Their eyes met. The pull increased until he thought his heart might burst from his chest. He leaned closer, but she pulled the soda away and dropped her gaze. But not before Treadon saw that she felt it too, that she wanted, needed, to not be alone anymore. He couldn't tell what was holding her back. Ellie became absorbed in cleaning her fingers with the dry napkin. Small pieces of torn napkin stuck to the jelly on her fingers. She wiped harder, rubbing her hands together, spreading the jelly and the napkin bits. She dropped her hands into her lap in defeat. "I'm sorry," Treadon said. "I didn't mean to ruin the dinner." She turned, facing the cliff and the ocean and the edge of the sky. A tear fell down her cheek. "You didn't ruin the dinner. This was perfect. A moment out of time. An instant where I could believe there was more for me. That I could have happiness like a normal girl. I know what it's like to want to be normal, but I've seen what you can do. I believe in what you are." Treadon scooted closer to her, wrapping one arm around her shivering shoulders. The temperature was dropping, and the wind coming in from the coast was cold. She leaned into him, hands and fists, like she was fighting against an invisible force. "I know you believe me," Ellie said. "But there's more you're not telling me?" Ellie sighed. "The original angels were killed, but not before they left their descendants the ability to never be alone, to choose another person to be their companion, their guardian." Treadon's breath caught. "You mentioned that before. The other night." He could feel his blood running hot, the desire in him to be by her side, to protect her, filled his mind, squeezed his chest. If this was real, if all she was waiting for was someone to choose her, he would be the one, gladly. What does that mean? It means that the angels never wanted their descendants to be alone, but every descendant must choose, and every guardian must accept, or the bond will be incomplete, ineffective. Is that what you've been afraid of? That you won't find a guardian? No, there's something else, something more. Treadon shifted their bodies so he leaned with her shoulder against his chest, their faces close together. What? I was never meant to have that happiness. I don't deserve it. He pulled her closer, arms wrapped around him, their lips a hair's breadth apart. Everyone deserves happiness. She closed the distance, pressed her lips into his. Warmth and heat and desire spread through him in a way that made him feel complete, whole. Her hands came up and touched his chest, their bodies curled in perfect harmony, and then she shoved him back. She pushed him away hard enough to make him fall back as she jumped to her feet. She brushed the tears from her cheeks and put her back to him. I'm sorry. He was sure he hadn't misread that. He was sure he'd let her accept the kiss. Had he wanted it so badly that he'd ignored her body language? Ellie shook her head. No, I wanted to. Treadon stood up and matched her posture, crossed his arms, but let his shoulder brush hers, letting her know he was there, that she was all he wanted. You said you get to choose a guardian. Treadon swallowed. What if it was me? I could be yours. He said the words, and the idea filled him with all the energy and passion he'd been missing. This was his purpose. There was nothing he wanted more. Let me be your guardian. Ellie turned, her face flat, her body sagging. I can't. You can't. It's too late. What do you mean? I already have a guardian. I've already chosen, and we only get one chance. Treadon's chest went cold. He reached out for her, but she stepped back. I'm sorry. I never should have led you on, let you believe there was a chance. That was wrong. He wanted to take her into his arms again, tell her he didn't care, but she was gone. She'd put up a wall that even he couldn't break through. His phone buzzed in his pocket, followed by a song claiming an irresistible sexiness. He fumbled the phone out of his pocket and silenced it. Jaren's name flashed across the screen. Jaren messes with my ringtones. He tried to smile, tried to reach her across the chasm she'd created. He does think he's pretty sexy. Ellie looked at the last rays of the setting sun. She had a strange, calm acceptance that broke Treadon's heart. You should answer that. And then I want you to take me home.